Time we got. Good evening, everyone. We're going to get started.
All right. Just let me know when you want me to record, please.
I would say now.
Okay.
Okay. These voices are going to come from up above here.
Recording in progress.
Sounds nice.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the, May 14th, 2025 Community Facilities Building Committee meeting. We will get started at 7:02 p.m. Just for the committee's sake, as you can see, there are quite a few of us on Zoom. It's that time of year, either travel or illness. And Gia, our clerk, is also on Zoom, so she did ask that make sure everyone use their microphone and state their name. That would be really helpful. And with that, before we rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, let's do a happy belated birthday to our Ron Feligno. Happy birthday a day late, Ron. Yay. I love birthdays. Your daughter reminded me. Anyhow. Okay. Well, if you would please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America,
And
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to do a quick roll call. I believe we're all going to be here in different places, but obviously Lori Hayes O'Brien, I'm here. Dawn Cantafio.
Here.
Dawn doesn't have a voice, so that may be the only time we hear from her tonight. Mike Buswell.
Here.
Okay. Christine Elleris.
I'm here.
Ron Feligno.
Here.
Rich Kroll.
Here.
Kelly Malassi.
Here.
Matt Sather.
Here.
Dean Fabrizio.
Here.
Dave Gala.
Here.
Tony Silver.
Here.
All right, we are all here in one way or another. I'm going to open it up for public comment. If we could try to keep it to 2 to 3 minutes, that'd be really helpful to give everybody an opportunity to speak. And I don't have a list, so I'm just going to call you up and come up orderly. And if you could say your name and address clearly and into the microphone, I'd appreciate it. You just have to press the button.
The green light's on.
You got it.
All right. Good evening. Jerry Gregory, 45 Plymouth Avenue. I would like to reiterate that the original plan, which we sat through on the 7th of last month, seemed to represent all of the hard work and effort the committee had spent the better part of a year working on. Doing interviews, asking for present needs, future needs, and building a plan so that Trumbull could have a great senior center moving forward like the rest of our competitive towns, as opposed to the hobble that is over on Priscilla Place. So I think they did a great job in the original presentation of both the size and the facility and the ability to meet the needs of future seniors in this town, which, to my observation, were some of the people on the town council. And I think we forget that this is more than just today's building, it's for the future. And so I'll go to the financing next, which is, it seems like the Finance Committee did a great job looking at the bond proposal that would be a one-time shot of what seems like a large amount of money, but if you spread that over the whole bond issue, it represents 1.5% going into our tax dollars versus the continued 70% of education budget. And I think that's totally unfair and an embarrassment to the town and a slap in the face of the seniors who have paid their taxes for many, many years. And I will speak for myself, being complacent that the people in the town would do the right thing. Voting down the original proposal, I think, was wrong. And I hope we can find a way to provide all of those facilities in the current observations. And in my opinion, we're wasting over $100,000 to ask architects and the planning committee to bend over backwards to try to do something different that they spend a year working on. Thank you.
handouts for both sides. Some for you and some for you. I don't think I have it for every. A and B. Okay.
Okay.
We're here to discuss lowering.
Name and,
Excuse me.
name and address, please.
Oh,
That's
sorry.
it. That's,
Milton Chin, 15 Oxon Hill Road. We're here to discuss lowering the cost of the proposed senior center. Seniors want a full-featured place of their own. Yes, money can be saved in finishes, landscaping, and other small items, but if the foregoing exercise results in any feature loss, such as 2 pickleball courts rather than 3, that loss will be to the account of Trumbull Republicans. They need to be told that the game they are playing is dangerous. If they play stupid games, they will win stupid prizes. The current design of the senior center checks all the boxes. All the cost-cutting proposals I have heard about will remove some functionality. I think there is a way to retain full functionality at a lower cost. I prepared Figure A, and I invite your attention to Figure A, that shows the Grace Church building on the property along with the new senior center design. I think Grace Church was built deep in the property to avoid the costs associated with removing ledge. This ledge is underneath the area that is now grass and trees, right where the 2-story senior center building is planned to be. A way to save money is to not fight Mother Nature. Dig where there is no ledge or little ledge. What if we reduce the current design's footprint to only 1 story? The ledge issue will be much smaller as we don't have to dig as deep. Figure B shows such a layout. To retain the same square footage, I've appended a 2-story wing shown in blue. That is on Figure B. The wing will be built in an area that is lower in elevation as compared to the first story of the senior center. This means less digging. Some parking spaces will be lost due to the wing, but these can be recovered at the rear of the property. Figure B also shows an alternative location for the 2-story wing. That's shown in red. This alternative location is better for emergency vehicles. In sum, I think not digging where it is troublesome and digging where it is easy will save some dollars without losing senior center features. Thank you.
anyone else? Did you? Go ahead.
Good evening, Mike Marble, 8 Briarcroft Avenue. Boy, I'll try to keep it very brief. Senior center, community center, words, labels. Being a senior myself, am all for a new senior center. Yes, the current senior center we have is ridiculously bad. Yes, true. However, the current design that is being discussed is basically something that was designed for the Hardy Road parcel, which was much bigger than the Main Street parcel, than the church parcel. Also, whether we like it or not as seniors, people that are looking to buy property in the town are not seniors generally, but they are younger people with families. And what are they looking for? They're looking for the perceived quality of the educational system. Most of the schools in town were built for me and my cohort, and they are coming to the end of their useful life. We're looking at a very, very large expense very soon in the future. And I think we need to keep that in mind when we're talking about going forward with other large projects. Thank you.
Brian Walsh, 5944 Main Street. Good evening, committee members. Since the Grace Church site was proposed last August, the neighbors have supported a senior center to replace the current outdated facility on Priscilla Place. We've been concerned about the size, scale, and price of the facility from the beginning. The mission appears to have taken what was proposed for Hardy Lane and placed it on the Grace property. That was the first design that was presented. After the input from the neighbors, a slightly smaller design was presented. The problem is that the footprint has not substantially changed in second variations. The neighbors have been portrayed as angry citizens who don't want this in their backyard. This is false, a misrepresentation of the neighbors. If the footprint of the building could be brought down to a reasonable size, then the neighbors would support it. After hearing comments from the members of the Trumbull Commission on the Aging during their April 25th, 2025 meeting, portraying the neighbors as villains to the project, I was filled with a sense of dejection. At approximately 21-minute mark, it was stated regarding the neighbors' feelings, I don't want it in my backyard, and that's the elephant in the room, is this piece of property, the parking lot, I don't want it in my neighborhood. To agree as a commission while stating it's going to be in somebody's neighborhood, while they're laughing, shows a complete disregard for the reasonable concerns of the neighborhood by a Town of Trumbull commission. Then follow up at the 38-minute mark stating, how about we cut back on the fancy landscaping wall? The plans on Hardy Lane place a 33,000 square foot building on 25 acres. The Grace Church site now has a proposed 30,000 square foot building on a 6-acre parcel with only roughly 5 usable acres since due to wetlands. The building to land ratio for Hardy Lane for 25 acres is 3.03%, compared to Grace Church with its 5 usable acres at 13.76%. The building to land ratio between the two projects has increased 354.13%. This is why we say the building is too big for the property. There is a loss of approximately 16 acres of natural buffering. While I understand that the footprint of the current building on the property is roughly the same, the current buildings are unobtrusively incorporated into the landscape. The current designs still leave the new center approximately 20 feet from the neighboring Long Hill Village and the entrance of the driveway 20 feet from the Edgewood neighbors. 20 feet of buffering sounds great in a meeting, but when you're standing in your yard, that is only about from this podium to that podium. I implore the architects to find a way to relieve the property lines. The neighbors have not opposed a senior center on the property and have tried to work with the committee to come to a mutually acceptable version of this project. If the neighbors of Grace Church have to compromise on our quality of life for this center, I do not think it's unreasonable that the rest of the town can make concessions on the project, size, scale, and price. When I hear comments about savings in the new plans, like they are only saving $5 million over 30 years, that's nothing. It is in fact not nothing. At 3.25% interest, which equates to $4,875,000 over that 30 years, what valuable town infrastructure could that money go to instead of the interest? I ask this building committee to work together in a way without anger or frustration with what the town council has tasked you with. Please come together with the architectural team and find a viable way to be fiscally responsible while shrinking the footprint of this building to relieve the pressure on the neighborhood property. There is a solution, but each side of this debate must have to give a little to achieve it. Thank you for listening to my concerns.
Good evening, committee members. Mark McKeel, 27 Edgewood Avenue. So good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. Tonight, I was hoping to hear the results of the April 24th and 25th bore sample testing, which was part of the original architect cost and not a result of the recent town council decision. Specifically, what was found with the bore testing and how that information may affect the projected costs or feasibility of the future land use options of the Grace property. Two of the potential plans, as I understand, are being considered and presented this evening include: one, asphalt paving of the full parking lot, including the overflow parking area. Two, construction of a pre-engineered barn structure. Both of these would require costly stormwater and rainwater mitigation efforts to protect the on-site wetlands, the private homes surrounding the property, and to prevent further erosion of the Paquonic River Valley. I also have a broader concern. Trumbull currently has 1,600 acres of town-owned parks. We rank third in the state for public pickleball courts. InSports rents out 6 more available indoor courts. Meanwhile, the mall campus has vast, underused space that could potentially serve the senior and the greater community needs. However, for the third time in 10 years, the committee is shifting to yet another perfect site in a heavily residential neighborhood. This time proposing to demolish and develop on the 144-year-old Quiet Church property. I don't mean the church is 144 years old. I mean the property has been church property for 144 years. Initially, literally in the neighbors' backyards, and attempting to shoehorn in a much too large 30,000 square foot municipal building. I urge the town to take a broader view and seriously revisit alternative sites that would better balance all of Trumbull's senior and the greater community needs with limited neighborhood impact. Thank you.
This is on? Yes? Okay. Dawn Roy, 20 Edgewood Avenue. I'm an abutter to Grace Church property, the proposed community center and senior center. To this committee, the town, and the seniors speaking out tonight. Our neighborhood is in full support of a reasonably sized senior center with hours that are appropriate and considerate of the close homes and people to the structure. Let me repeat that. We support a reasonable senior center with hours that will not disturb our homes, our lives, our physical and mental health. I do not support a community center of any kind with hours of operation from when the senior center closes and community center activities begin until 9 or 10 at night. I do not support a community center that will be open on weekends, during the day, and at night. This plan will have negative repercussions to our well-being. To say otherwise feels both dismissive and inconsiderate. We have begged and pleaded with all of you to imagine yourselves living in our homes next to a large 30,000 square foot municipal building that never shuts down. No one in their right mind would choose to live in such close proximity to said structure or to something that never shuts down. We have lived at 20 Edgewood for almost 23 years. The neighboring property of Grace Church has almost always been peaceful, quiet, and respectful. Anything beyond the senior center proposal will change all of that. I continue to plead with this committee and the town, do the right thing, not only for the seniors, but for the very people who will be impacted the most. The people who have to live in such close proximity to the structure and all that comes with it. Thank you.
Anyone else?
My name's Nate Gross, for Canterbury Lane. It's time to get the senior and community center done. Our seniors have contributed to our town for decades, so how can we tell them that $30 million senior center is too much to spend? Sure, there's ways we can save money on aesthetic features, but how does shrinking the size to 20,000 square feet help our seniors? It's already been established that size is not enough to meet the needs of our seniors. What I don't understand is why the members of the town council didn't raise any objections to this proposal in the several months since it was developed, only to object at April's council meeting. It's time to move forward with this project and let the voters vote. We can resolve outstanding issues over the next several months, but it's time to let the town vote on this. I'll also ask the members of this committee if they can make a motion to do an analysis of how much the additional costs caused by this decision of the council, both direct and indirect costs caused by the delays and other factors, compared to how much these new proposals would supposedly save. Because as taxpayers, we deserve to know how much the town council has cost us by delaying this project and seeking more proposals.
Good evening, Marlene Silverstone, Long Hill Village, 3 Cherry Blossom Lane. I still have some questions that I'd like answered. Number one, what are the days and hours of operation for the proposed senior/community center? 2, what are the activities, hours, and days of operation for the community center part? This question, again, continues to be the elephant in the room, and it continues to be ignored and not addressed. Is this building going to operate similarly to the library, which has a community room for meetings? Or is it going to operate like the Branford Community House, which was used in the traffic study? A Branford-type community house does not belong on 5958 Main Street site. The Branford Community House houses both the senior and community center with full recreational programs, hours, anywhere between 6:30 a.m. to 9 p.m., Monday through Friday, and on Saturdays, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. It is situated in a more urban setting and not in the suburban setting that the proposed Trumbull Senior/Community Center is in, or wants to be in. It is located on its own lot and abuts 4 streets. The Branford Center also has sidewalks, crosswalks, and one-way streets around it. Meadow Street, which abuts one side, has the commuter rail behind it with commercial storefronts that are more industrial-type businesses. In the back of this community center, the Branford Community Center, there's a public recreational field built in the 1930s. The community center was opened in 1963 and renovated 56 years later to its current size. At the February 2025 Community Facilities Meeting, the committee stated that their responsibility was to recommend a building and not how it operates. The first selectman's response was that it would be her responsibility regarding the building's operation. This is not satisfactory. There needs to be written standards/restrictions. Otherwise, how this building operates is subject to the personal discretion of whoever is in the selectman's office. The last question I'd like addressed is, how do the options being reviewed tonight make the building footprint fit better in this tight site, addressing the need to have robust buffers for the neighbors, at the same time providing driveways for access to and from the site? Thank you.
Good evening, Sherry Boyd, 16 Pinehurst Street. You've probably memorized that by now. The 6 acres at Grace Church is the closest thing to open space that remains on Main Street, except for the one wooded parcel currently for sale just south of 25. If a wildlife study were conducted there, they would see the dozens of birds and mammals who live or visit that property daily. At the very front of Grace Church property sits a grove with a beautiful collection of heritage and ornamental trees, which should be preserved and have yet to be inspected by an arborist who isn't employed by the town. If you haven't yet, I ask you to visit the Grace Church property. Take the time, linger for a few minutes, and imagine it being bulldozed, torn apart, and blasted, like what's happening behind the Eco Complex further north on Main Street. That would be tragic. We had one gathering in the Grove a few weeks ago and were again in awe of the beauty there. Now awaiting permission from the administration, and we'll share the upcoming date on our Facebook group for the next meeting. Join the Grace Church 5 if you're interested. I was disappointed that during the hour that the senior center was discussed at the April Commission on Aging, not once was there a mention of Long Hill Village, which is right next door to Grace Church, where those residents would experience firsthand the blasting, demolition, and outright pollution that will be generated by the proposed development. Are the Long Hill Village seniors less important than the senior center members? Trumbull seniors need a new center. The proposed building is more than the seniors need and violates the promises made to neighbors early in the process. Why wasn't there an architectural do-over when the committee changed their focus from a 25-acre parcel at Hardy Lane to the 6-acre parcel at Grace Church? Why have they continued to try to shoehorn the Hardy Lane building onto the Grace Church land? What we need to bring to referendum is a dedicated senior center with community use, where community use is defined as a few additional meeting rooms. Our group is hopeful that we might see a reasonable redesign tonight that isn't, again, merely a gutted Hardy Lane structure. Taking a building which from the back resembles a Holiday Inn and removing the most important square footage underground is not the way to get this finally approved and built. We have come full circle. If the building committee and the seniors insist on the $31.5 million monument that doesn't check all the boxes for the town, then it makes sense to find a larger, flat piece of land and build a senior community and aquatic center, including the much hoped-for indoor pool, for only a little more than what's estimated here. We would take back our senior center, yes, and we ask the town to preserve the historic church, let the preschoolers remain, and create open garden space with a fountain and gazebo or a community garden on this property. We will stand strong for that outcome. Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, Elizabeth Wecker, 16 Edgewood Avenue. A year has officially passed since I learned of the town's intention to purchase the Grace Church property. Much discussion has taken place in the months since then, and to me, two truths remain constant. Number one, the size of the property is finite. Regardless of how much we discuss it, the acreage isn't changing. The building is too large for the property. The community center and the gym are at fault. They don't belong on the site. They don't fit physically or aesthetically into the neighborhood. Just because it can be crammed into 6 acres doesn't mean it should be. Why a too large, too expensive structure is being proposed remains a mystery. Why a community center is now inexorably tied to the senior center and the two seemingly can't be separated is also a mystery. I'm left to wonder what the actual agenda is. It seems obvious it's not providing our seniors with a much-needed new location for their center. If the plan remained senior center only, I believe that we'd be in the building phase instead of where we are today. The second truth is that a much larger project can be explored, one that includes a pool, a senior center, a walking track, and pickleball courts for miles. A true community center, but an appropriate alternate site must then be selected, not a tiny parcel of land in the busy center of town, located in an already established neighborhood. I encourage all the build it at all costs, no compromises section of the senior population to visit the site and see what's actually being proposed, to see the size and scope of the building, and see what you are asking your fellow residents to personally give up for you. Most importantly, equity in our homes, but also our peace and privacy. And from what I'm hearing, all in the name of pickleball. I encourage the senior population and all those who are truly looking for a new senior center to use your voices, to tell the administration to listen, act, and compromise to resolve this issue and get this project moving forward. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, I'm going to call public comment closed at 7:31. Move on with our agenda. Sorry. Move on with our agenda with approval of the April 9th, 2025 meeting minutes. Can I have a motion for that?
So moved, Dave Gallo.
Thanks, Dave. And a second? Tony? Any discussion? Nobody caught it? Matt wasn't there. So, Gia, Matt say there was not an attendance, so he couldn't have spoken on page 9. Or page 8, I'm sorry. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, the 5th paragraph down, that was Dean Fabrizio talking about the reduction in cost. So if we could make that amendment and approve those minutes as amended with those two changes. Anybody motion that?
So moved, Christina Laris.
Thanks, Christine. And a second? Tony?
Ron Foligno, second.
Okay, we'll go Ron on that one. Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor? Good. I thought that one was an obvious one, Rich. I'm bummed. I'm bummed you missed it. So the purpose of tonight's meeting, as you can see, a lot of us are on Zoom. 8 of us here. The architects could not be here. We're having a special meeting on Monday night where they will be back to go over the options. As many people know, they quickly sent us 5 options before our last meeting and an additional 2 in the weeks since that all the committee has had a chance to look at and weigh in on what was their preferred option to look at and potentially make changes to. I want to be clear to people, we are on a timeline. The town council, there's only so much time we can take to come up with these alternate plans and come up with cost estimates, which take a good close to a month to procure just the cost estimates themselves. So we really do need to be making decisions on the changes we want to make to the plan to present to the town council for their July meeting in the next coming weeks. And preferably Monday will be a lot of decisions made to help the architects along. But I thought it was best if we all meet as a committee, talk about some of the changes. I think the best way to start it off, though, is I've asked Michelle, and Ronnie's here as well, to kind of talk to some of the things that we know that are important. I am going to take a minute. I know my facial expressions don't hide my thoughts very well, so I think I should probably address some of the things that were said in public comment. And again, I have sat in your shoes. I appreciate people, speaking what they know to be their truths, but there are there is some information out there that just isn't so. And I think it's important moving forward that we correct that. That doesn't mean all the statement of anything that someone said isn't true, but some of it is. And I just want to be clear about a couple points before we move on. I know there's a lot of conversation about the Hardy Lane size and it being 25 acres. There was never at any time in our discussions that those 25 acres were ever going to be used. I believe we were concentrating on, was it 6 to 7? Somewhere along that. It wasn't totally decided, but there was only so many buildable acres. And originally, this plan in an even bigger iteration was on the Old Churchill Road site on an even smaller acreage. So I think making those comparisons, throwing around 25 acres to 6 is not really a true comparison. So we just wanted to be clear that we never were looking at 25 acres on Hardy Lane, or we're going to be able to access 25 acres on Hardy Lane. I know there's conversations about pickleball courts and that we have a lot of outdoor pickleball courts, and it is pretty astounding to me as someone who doesn't play pickleball how many outdoor courts we have. But the idea of having one connected to a senior center is paramount in any of our discussions from day one. If you spend any time at the senior center, you will know that is the absolute most popular event, and it's amazing how they do it, where they do it. I'm hearing stories of people falling out of doors and banging into things. And I think, you'll see in some of these iterations that 2 pickleball courts is a reasonable thing to have as a senior center. I know people kind of tongue-in-cheek call it a pickleball community center. That is not this committee's view of it, nor has it ever been, nor will it be moving forward. So I am going to ask Michelle to kind of speak to that and the needs of the senior center specifically. I know, again, the mall came up. That has been studied and discussed, and for people brighter than us that know about this and decisions made. So that is not something that is, at this point, going to be considered, and that has been studied thoroughly. The only other thing that I wanted to mention, I know I did not see the Commission on Aging meeting that people were referring to, but I don't think it's always appropriate to come to another committee to discuss another commission's or committee's work. At least I'm not comfortable with that. So I understand your frustration, and you certainly are welcome to that. I would appreciate it that it's not part of this public comments, because it really has nothing, there's no impact on this committee. And so I know the Commission on Aging does good work, and it's hard to hear them being kind of put through the ringer here, but I also understand that people have an opinion about that, but I don't think this is the appropriate place to talk about it. Hours are continually brought up. Mrs. Tesoro has addressed that. This committee was given parameters of what we should be looking at to build. We will not determine the hours. That is not our job. We are certainly keeping in mind what the requests are when we're making our decisions, but that will be a decision of the town, and I believe that's been said a number of times. So I know you would like more definitive about that, but that is a town discussion and not something this committee can answer for you. Michelle, do you want to come up for a few minutes? I know there was a couple of things that came up that you wanted to discuss, but I think just for the committee in general, when we're moving through the three options that we chose to focus on, I know Michelle has been really, trying to hone in on what her needs, what we've been hearing about for years now, but if we can kind of encapsulate it as we're having this discussion, I think it'd be helpful.
Okay, sure.
And thanks, Michelle.
Michelle Jacob, Department of Human Services. So I just took a few notes because there's so many things that I hear that I'm always wanting to clarify. And I always assume everyone knows this and has heard it, but the committee members change, our council members change, our supporters change. So I just wanted to kind of go back over and tell you what we are as a senior center. The one thing that has frustrated me most sitting here is hearing other people tell the seniors in this room and all over this community what they need. And what makes them a professional to determine what a senior center should be. We are not just a gym. We're not just a bingo, game hall. We're not just a lunch program. People don't just sit around, and we bring volunteers in to keep them, our seniors happy and socialized. We are an active community. We are based off of research and national models across the country, national organizations that tell us the best way to operate a senior center. Based on our community needs. We're all unique communities. We all have different needs, but all of us in the senior center community work together. We're all involved locally. We're involved nationally. We follow standards, and that's important to us. And I think we want to make it very clear that this just isn't a group of people saying what needs to be done and what we're demanding, but we're following models and research and evidence-based programming. And I think it's important to note that. We are not just a pickleball center. I always call it the pickleball room because for me, it's, if I'm looking at 2 or 3 courts, I can determine what other programs I can have in there based on that size. We're not just looking to do pickleball. If you take this gym, or what are we calling it now, rec space, out of this building, we will lose programming that we currently offer. My understanding is this building was based off of a shared space. So if it's senior and community, that shared space means we use it by day, maybe they use it in the evening or late afternoon, but taking away space will cut our programming. That building was built for us to use, the full building, all day long. And I want to make that clear. I think a lot of people think that that gym space was built just for community use, and it wasn't. That would be taking away a huge piece of our programming. I think, besides pickleball, people come to the center for one activity, and Milton was just telling me we had 21 people there today for pickleball on one court, and I don't know if you guys have seen the amount of space. They all go sit on the stage on chairs where pickleballs come flying at them. We do have curtains there, though, so that's a good thing, but, we have been outgrowing this center for a long time. We didn't ask to build something bigger than what we need. We asked to build something that meets the current need, but could also be expanded and accommodate more people. People might come to the senior center for one activity, but they have no idea behind the scenes, the staff, our goal is to get them to be part of our community. We're already saying, okay, if we can get, Bob to talk to Stanley and we can get them to be friends, they will come more often. And then we start, that's kind of how we build, and people make friendships. We get them out of the home, we get them back on, we get them healthy again. We prevent isolation. And we know that when someone's at home and isolated, it can lead to depression, chronic illness, regardless of age. But, every single person that uses our center, what their ability is doesn't matter. Our goal is to always figure out how we can get them to stay and come for more. We offer services to educate our seniors on Medicare, Social Security, their benefits. We connect them to attorneys, long-term planning, caregivers who have no idea what to do with their parents' estate. You can walk in with a pile of mail and say, I don't know what any of this is, and we are there to guide you. We are a focal point that the entire community can access. not just seniors. So if anyone wants to come in and say, you know, what is this program? What are we hearing about? Can you get us information? We're here for the entire community. We are a very special place. We're, you know, I call us a hidden gem, but we are a lifeline to a lot of people. And I just want to, you know, I keep saying make that clear, but I think it's so important to know what we do is very important. And we're not just asking for some activity space. And I think that's pretty much what I wanted to clear up, unless you guys have questions. But I know, you know, what's important to us is the size of the rooms. We want to make sure we can accommodate all the activities that we have. I know there's been some changes, so if you guys have questions for us on those, that's fine, but, yeah.
So we're going to pull up, Cindy's going to play the role of Rocco tonight and pull up the pictures for us to look at of the 3 different options and compare it to what our current plan is. But does anybody have any direct questions for Michelle before I have her bop up and down as those options are coming up? Anything else you need her to clarify? We're good? Okay. All right, I am going to ask you to bop. Okay. So I think, and Michelle, thank you. I guess I don't know that we've probably said that clear enough that this from day one, at least the day one that I've been here, which is a long time, long before I was chair, the focus was on the senior center's needs, and every iteration of this building since 2015 has been based on what the senior center has said they'd needed. What the thought of the community center is, can it be used once those doors are closed and at what time? Now that it's something that can be negotiable, but I'll say again, any component in this building wouldn't change if it was a senior center only. And that is based on your good work and what we've seen in other places and what we know to be true about a growing population in Trumbull. So thank you for that, appreciate it. Do you wanna pull them up? So we kind of sent out a little blurb to everybody after in our quick timeline to see the 7 options and what kind of stuck with the people, and so what the committee thought this is not going to work for me. And we pretty much settled on it was option 1, 6, and 7 that were worth discussion. There was a single vote here and there for others. I think people pretty much put out ever having a separate building. I think it was a good thought to think about, but nobody seemed to really lie on that. And I think for senior center purposes, it was really never going to work as a separate building, because that would mean other staff needing to be in a separate place and seniors needing to go outside to use a pickleball court. So those pretty much, I know I'm not even going to remember exactly what those options were, but those kind of cut those out of the list. Whenever Cindy gets the password in.
I think Phil's doing it for me.
Oh, hi, Phil.
Thank you,
Okay.
Phil.
Thanks, Phil. So I believe that is what our current plan is now, just for you guys to take a look. I'm not sure how many of you have it in front of you, but we all pretty know it pretty well. Similar to what we've been working on for a long time, trying to, some things were kind of reduced in an effort to kind of compartmentalize things, but this is the one that was presented to the town council with that cost estimate at $31,700. And why don't we move on to the second floor? That again is the upper level that everyone knows about, but just to give you an idea. And then the next one is where it sits on the property. So then we can move on to option 1, which I think a lot of people were drawn to because it was similar to our current one, which I need to say this too before we move on. Overwhelmingly, every committee member in their response to me wanted to have our current plan as an alternate, which actually is kind of an oxymoron, but really thought that the current plan still needed to be looked at, and it would be, it's necessary for me to say how heavily the committee members felt about that, but we do have a task in front of us, and so that's where we'll move forward. So option 1, you guys can tell, it really cut that third pickleball court out. I know that's not ideally what the senior center want, but it seems like something that Michelle felt that they could definitely live with. Other than that, downstairs were not a lot of changes. There was some question about the fitness space, and I know Michelle was going to be working with Rocco and Tom to see if that was the way that's kind of set up was going to be a possibility, that long, narrow road. So when they're here on Monday, we'll get a little more information about that. Anybody have any specifics about the lower level of option 1? I'm going to pull out my questions. Rich?
Rich Kroll. So on the lower level, one concern is that food pantry. Is that going to be a big enough space for what they need?
So I did send some of the questions along to the architects, and let me find the one that kind of answered that. They felt like anything they had, they were, they're kind of approximates. Even as we were moving along, some of these were approximate and they had some wiggle room, but they felt like that was going to be sufficient.
Okay. I mean, my feedback on that, as you know, was that fitness space doesn't look very useful.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be to somehow rejigger those bathrooms and such so that the hallway would either be where that fitness area is, give the pantry more space, or move the pantry back. But I think you wanted it to have its own external door, but it just looked a lot more reduced, so.
Yeah,
Concern was,
and
is
that
that,
long.
is that the space they need?
Mm-hmm. I did share that with them, and hopefully on Monday we'll have some more feedback on that. Anybody else on the Dean?
I just wanted to add some context to this. I looked at a lot of the numbers. It was pretty well laid out. So for this option, you'd get a 15% area reduction, and you'd save about 6% in your cost, which for a person that has a $445,000 house, it would save them about $7 in taxes. So that's what we're talking about. Okay, I put these down.
No, that's fine.
Okay, thanks.
So if I could just add, I understand that the lessening of the excavation on this property does save cost.
Right.
Right, and that's really what that possible savings there, I think, is alluding to, is the reduction in the digging. Because as we'll see by the next slide, the upper floor is identical in all of these scenarios. More or less. I'd just like to reiterate, Lori, and I know you did mention this already, that I think that the reduction of this size as originally presented does inherently limit the usage of the senior center for their programmatic needs. And I think that's what we're all here for, is to offer programmatic needs to the seniors as well as to the community. I kind of wish that there weren't pickleball courts outlined on each of these because I think that if we call that flex space or flex recreation, which I believe it would be used for, I think that would be a little more appropriate. I too, like Rich mentioned, think that fitness area, which is in the center of this, in that light purple color, kind of looks like a storage closet, looks a little too small. And I'm also concerned that any of the iterations other than what was originally proposed vastly reduces the ability for a heating and warming center that we had talked about previously. Even though it may still be able to be used that way, the loss of square footage for things like showers and additional bathrooms, things of that nature, does cut into it.
So before I lose that train of thought, I did ask that of Tom and Rocco, and that they would still find a place for showers. You're right, size-wise, we're going to have less room, but that it would still check off what needs are Megan has said are necessary, but minimally, 100% for sure. And I just read the part that I wanted. So as far as the fitness room in here, I said it was concerning. And the response was either another space gets smaller or that we excavate a bit more to change the size of that fitness room. So that will have to be a discussion if option 1 is going to be the one presented. So that was the answer to that. I'll throw a little out here that they're going to have to talk about more, but I did ask, basketball was a conversation in making that gym bigger, and it will probably be compromised in most of these options. I believe the way Rocco said it was clear overhead in most option is reduced to 16-foot floor to floor, which would be a 13-foot clear, meaning basketball would be out. Option 1 has about a 17-foot 6 inch clear and could conceivably be played on a smaller scale. Sorry, Dave. And option 7 could work, but we'd have to change the height and lose that patio. We'll get to that in option 7.
And thank you for
Yep.
clarifying that. Not sorry, Dave.
I know.
Sorry, Trumbull.
Yep.
Because this is, the intent
right.
here was that this would be used for more than just pickleball. That this would be used for multiple facility needs. So lowering the height damage is the wrong word.
Yeah.
It has such an adverse impact on the use of the building that we should really consider this. Yeah, both current and future use.
And I agree. I did talk, and I think Michelle and I have talked about this a bit too, is that, they do use that room for a variety of other reasons. The one that I asked them what would be taken out in any of these, and it really was only basketball, but I don't want to say only basketball because we have decided that, seniors play basketball and it would be nice to have that other opportunity. But I just wanted to make that clear before Monday night so everybody is sure about that. I also want to mention, just so you're going to see and hear what they have, we've tried not to call the amphitheater, but every now and then it's called the amphitheater. That will not be in any of the options any longer. That space will either be repurposed or moved depending on the options that we're looking at. So I know some of the drawings still have kind of that curve in there. Look at and I think as Dave mentioned, this is the upper floor and at this point unchanged in option 1. And the dotted line is, you can tell how much less excavation, basically, how much the we'll lose of the lower floor. And other than that one, there wasn't much changed about it. The parking was the same in this site. So this option probably had the least amount of change in option 1. Ron?
I have a kind of a silly observation, but at any rate, I'm looking at the commodes, the bathrooms. Seems that we're ADA compliant, I assume, in both, but we've lost the designation of men's and women's bathrooms, and also I don't see the commodes in one of the bathrooms.
They'll be there.
I'm sure they will, but it was, some of us, what we see is what we kind of believe and kind of get hung up on. So I just want to qualify that's not, should not be an issue. And I like what Dave and Dean both did with the misnomer, if you will, of that physical area. It's not, because if you recall, early on we had a big hassle whether it was a basketball court or not. Then pickleball court. Call it whatever you will. It will be something that will be used by a lot of people. And it's going to be needed for a lot of people, along with the upstairs facility. Thank you.
Now, and to your point, just as we're moving on, again, these are conceptual plans. You're not going to see all those little details, and that will come out strongly as we move on. But and so some things may not be labeled exactly. I believe in this one, it was called the multipurpose room, but it's actually the art room, or I think it was in this option. But I think by color coding, we kind of all get the gist. So maybe on to option 6. Sorry, Rich, go ahead.
Rich Kroll. So in general, all these options, right, still kind of stuck with the footprint we've been working with. Can we ask Tom and Rocco to put together some concept, at least one concept, where the building is less wide and more deep, just to give us an idea of what that might look like? If we're going to go to something more like a half court or something a little over a half court gym, it's going deeper might require less excavation for that, right?
So I think as far as footprint,
to get to that same height.
So I make sure I'm following you. I mean, as far as something of less of a footprint, it would be the upper level that would have to change, right? So
well, they would both change, but
yeah. Well, the lower level seems to be the part we're really maneuvering a little bit here more, right? And making some of those changes. But as far as the upper level, I did ask them to give us some, what minimal sizes could be for the multi-purpose room and those kind of things to see if there's some space there. But again, I'm going to go back to Michelle and those needs and your concerns about exact square footage of each room, that we're making sure we're getting enough space in there. And that upper level is really dictating our footprint. and there's not a lot of wiggle room up there. I think the lower level, so the things you're talking to, we could probably have more flexibility.
Well, if we went to something less rectangular, right? I mean, you could keep the same square footage upstairs, maybe just laid out differently to keep the same functionality.
So, Cindy, do you mind?
Some of the concern, right, that's been expressed is the width of the
footprint,
building, its closeness to the proximity to the borders of the property. Maybe some of that could be addressed.
So, what kind of dictates the upper level a lot is that multipurpose room, right? And where the gym is coming out, we couldn't really turn that multipurpose room because that. But I mean, we can certainly ask them.
I mean, he explained the reasons why turning the building entirely 90
Yes.
degrees doesn't work.
Oh, that was the other thing I was going to talk about.
Doesn't
Thank
work.
you.
So, and
It
that
doesn't.
that makes sense. You can't have parking on angles.
Right.
But if you were to make it slightly less wide and slightly more deep,
So-
maybe somehow it works out.
And so what would we change about the upper level? Like where would you see that happening?
Well, if it was less wide, and you wanted to maintain the same multi-purpose space, something like that conference room would have to maybe come off, right? And we would also lose part of those, part of the office space. But if the building gets deeper, those offices, instead of being like kind of rectangular or kind of square right now, maybe that could be more, longer and deeper, more rectangular.
So potentially,
And maybe the conference room space can, go across from where that is, but where the current seating area is, something like that. There's a creative one, so.
I know. I think, Michelle, I'm going to keep calling on you. I'm sorry, but I know you said that there were some of those offices that may be able to not have to be connected. So maybe one of the things we can look at asking them for in this upper level is where that patio has been, which is in and out, and some of the options, and maybe moving some spaces out there and taking them kind of off the end. Do you know what I'm saying? Like the blue conference room, if that were to go kind of connected into that purple games room and come out there, we could almost lose that side and then maybe be able to move some of those offices too. Michelle, do you see where I'm talking about? Is that feasible? Yeah, why don't you come up?
So the way the offices are,
Sorry.
the way the offices are designed now is we have our social services department in there with senior center staff, which is not our current setup. This is ideal for us because currently we're walking, back and forth on a regular basis to discuss things that are happening at the center. So ideally for them to be together, that would be wonderful. But social services could go, in another location from the senior center staff. So you could move them.
I'm wondering if trying to get some feedback from you guys. If we ask them to take a section of the office suite, I'll call it, either move the conference room and game room down out to where the patio is, and then move those areas there. So that takes off. So if that conference room, the width of that conference room came in towards the hallway, and then some of the office suite came in, we might be able to gain some space there. Is that feasible?
Yeah, as long as there's not loss of office space.
Right.
And that we were able to keep, our departments together.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I did ask them about sizes and if that patio had other uses, if we could move something out there to take it off the end. So I will reiterate that with them tomorrow. All right. Sorry, Cindy Rocco.
6.
Yeah, let's go to 6.
6.
So I think the lower, there we go. All right, so thoughts on option 6? Ron?
One quick comment, and I'm sure Dean can elaborate on this, but the same thing that basically Dean had done. You're cutting the space by 27% in that one, and you're saving 12.5% in dollars. So you're losing almost a third for, what, 13, 14%. Just to comment on that. Dean, do you have any? I'm sure he does.
Well, yeah, so it's going to be, the percentages would be similar to a different option, which equates to about $11 a year for the taxpayer.
Is this, Dave, is this have the same issue with ceiling height? As far as you can tell?
I learned about ceiling height the same time you did, so I would guess that it does, considering that the depressed staircase that was on our originally proposed project has seemed to have gone away on all of these. I would assume that the ceiling height has lost its height. So yes. And it seems to lose a tremendous amount of functionality.
So still
on the
not
lower level. It's still not being able to be used for multiple
basketball
recreational.
I think in this
activities.
iteration, it goes down to a 13-foot clear.
What's the ceiling height of the current room? I know that there's the clearance issue of you have that like those glass light fixtures, right? But like, what's the height from the glass light fixtures down? Like, just curious currently.
So, I don't know, Michelle, do you probably don't know that, right? But I will tell you that the 13 feet is fine for pickleball. It's not going to be fine for volleyball or basketball. Was the conversation I recall us having, right? That those were fine for pickleball heights, but not for others. And I did just hear about ceiling height this afternoon too. So I've been waiting to get some of these back, and they'll be able to talk to it more on Monday, as I said. My concern about this is that a fitness room would have to be added. In discussions with Michelle and her, talking to them, that a separate fitness room with separate flooring has a very different use than the exercise space. So we would, again, have to find a spot for the fitness room and hopefully have it not be long and narrow again. So they are aware of that. So that will change to some extent. We did ask a little bit about, this setup of back-to-back pickleball courts and, what kind of divider that would need. So when I asked what the needed fitness room, where could it be added, it would have probably push human services out more, or we'd have to excavate more behind the exercise area, which would change those savings costs. What kind of divider? It could be a full height or just like a ball barrier, but I think Michelle will have to hone in on how she actually would see this kind of iteration used based on, the different things that happen. I know you mentioned other games that going back to back, it might be an issue, but there's potentials for dividers, and that, you just don't want to, if you have one instructor down there or not be able to have clearance to the sea on the other side either. So this one's probably a little more challenging. I'll say this was, out of the three, everyone's last choice, or the least amount of votes, and as well as Michelle and Ronnie's choice as well for this. So on this one, the lower level would definitely need some kind of exercise space somewhere, so that would change slightly. Anything else on the lower level for that? Rich?
So with the exercise space, what's the flooring difference that needs?
Michelle, do you want to? The fitness.
Fitness flooring. Is that like a cushioned floor, or is it?
You wrote it out for me somewhere.
Tap dancing.
Flooring needs. Here we go.
I had a list. I should have brought it.
Here, I have it. Do you want?
Oh, do you have
I
it?
do. I have your list. Well, cheat sheet.
May have asked before in other meetings, but I don't recall the answer if I did.
Let's see. Right. So, and I'm just trying to remember the type of floor, like a seamless floor is really required for like a dance studio exercise space. You know, like a wood gym floor is going to be different for, and I don't know what flooring and that was a question I had, is what is the flooring in this exercise fitness space here where pickleball would happen? But we have tap dancers, we have jazz, we have line dancing, ballet. We offer everything you can possibly imagine, and they all require different flooring. So I know the architects are great at putting in something that's multi-use. But that was really important to us to recognize that if this exercise room didn't have that type of flooring, we would need it in another space. The multi-purpose room upstairs would not have that type of flooring. It wouldn't be
I know
appropriate.
you mentioned kind of, you know, people on the ground for yoga and those kind of things too,
Right.
and that really wasn't going to work on a gym floor, or depending on the multi-purpose floor, if that would work. So ideally, in a separate fitness space specific to those activities was the request.
Right. And I mean, there's all types of, you know, research you could do, but it's non-slip surface, shock absorption, durability, safe move. I mean, there's so many different needs based on your activity. But can I just point out on this one real quick is the classroom is also missing now on this lower level. So I think upstairs, they just expanded some of the other classrooms and made them larger.
When we get to the next
Okay.
level, let's make sure it's up there. I think it got moved back up there. Anybody else on the lower level? Well, Cindy has it up. No,
Oh.
thanks.
One more.
Oh, go ahead, Rich.
So, I mean, if the current need for the fitness area is different types of flooring, like how is that handled now when there's different activities?
Oh, sorry, Michelle, you're back.
Well, if there's
I told you you were going to be on
different
tonight.
fitness activities now, and some of them require different flooring from each other, how is that handled now? Like, do you put down temporary mats, or they just work with?
They work with what we have. You know, in
Yeah.
the past, they used to make us put down these boards for the tap classes, and finally we said, listen, they're not safe, they slip, they're dangerous. But you know, we're lucky we do have a room that is appropriate for tap dance right now. I think it's like laminate fake wood flooring down there, so it's okay. But oh yeah, just the space is a horrible setup, but the floorings are okay.
And how about like yoga and where are you doing those right now?
I think they're using a carpeted space, right? Well, right. Depending on the instructor and the class, what they prefer. One insists on a carpeted room, which is very small. We can't get a lot of people in there, but we do have one large yoga class. They use the auditorium, and they're on the wood floor. Yeah.
While you're still up there. Sorry. So the multi-purpose room is designed for 200 people, right? But typically, like, how often do you need to use the full capacity of that for an event versus how often could it, a third of it be sectioned off and used for classroom space, that kind of thing?
I mean, not even, maybe once a month. There's a demand for it. Really a few times a year when we do big celebrations like the holiday season or a big summer party. The current space right now, you can divide it into three. One of those, the one that's on the left will always be used for the lunch program. And depending on the day and the popularity and the usage we get, we might need to use that middle space. The room with the platform on the right, we would use that for some of our regular exercise classes that might prefer to be up there. And that, depending on the size, would also possibly use two of the spaces.
And what kind of furniture's in the classrooms?
Right now, what do we have?
Well, what will be? What are you looking to have in those classrooms?
Sure. So, your exercise and fitness space need to be clear, empty rooms with storage.
Right.
You have some chairs available if people need it. We do have like a sit and fit class where we pull chairs out of a closet for anyone who needs to sit for exercise. Our classroom space, we have one that is open, and that's for support groups. If we need to do, like I think we do movies in there where we don't have to constantly be moving tables and chairs in and out. But the rest of our rooms do have a lot of table spaces for education and art. And all
Right,
that.
so it would be tables and chairs.
Tables and chairs, but there should be a room without tables and chairs for other types of needs. Yeah, which is possible.
Michelle Ronfeligno. Relative to the dance area downstairs, I used to call it the dance studio.
Mhm.
Do you know if there's any water that incurs on the flooring down there as it does in the cafeteria area?
In the current center,
Yeah.
the entire lower level gets flooded when we rain.
Okay, because another concern I wanted to mention is that there are ceiling leaks above, and I would think in the electrical room that is off that dance area. That's where all your electrical panels
Yeah.
are and breakers and whatever.
Yeah, and I
the
mean,
ceiling tiles above that area are well stained from leakage.
Right. And I mean, we call someone immediately to have those come in and fixed, but it is on a regular basis. It happens often, and so we're
That's not-
constantly bringing in
So-
services for.
But
you
could
know,
that be a potential safety concern?
for Band-Aids?
Just in
Pardon?
the interest of time, I don't want to get so
Okay.
stuck on talking about
current-
the horrific current senior center. We
Well,
know
I'm just
it-
trying to bring the need and the necessity to act relatively.
Yeah, you know what? I think anybody sitting here, even though they may not agree with everything about it, I don't think anyone is questioning whether the conditions of the current senior center. So I don't want us to get so stuck on that. I think everybody's pretty on board with that. So I appreciate that you live it more than the rest of us. But I think we'll probably have better use of our time if we start moving forward. Thank you.
2015.
Anything else on this lower level? Rich?
Sorry, Rich Kroll again. I mean, so it seems to me if we're going to try to accommodate two pickleball courts, it would be better to try to do it in a version that can also be used as at least like a half-court basketball court potentially.
Yeah, and
I
That-
think this was my last choice. I think this was.
it was everybody's last choice, and I think that was one of the reasons, honestly, at least. I think in 1 and 7, we have the potential for that to happen, at least a half court. So, and we'll get more details on that. I believe this was the last choice for a lot of people for that reason. So, but we need to come up with 3. And out of the 7, this was the 4th least bad, I guess we would say. All right, why don't we go up to the upper level on this one? So I want to totally wrap my head around the elevator, but I'm confident that they'll relocate it where they need it. I think Michelle, what was your worry about that you thought one of the classrooms in this one?
So the classrooms, there was a classroom eliminated downstairs, yeah.
But it came up here.
It didn't come up here, but what they did was actually, I can't tell in this design, the 2 multi-purpose classrooms up top it's the one classroom that can be divided. I don't know if that one's been extended, and some of the other concepts it has, but the games room and the arts and crafts.
Are over to the right.
On the bottom right, those
Yeah.
were extended, and I think the patio's gone.
Right, so
Those look a little bigger. So they added a little more classroom space, but they took away an entire space, the largest space.
So so we had 2 multifunction classrooms and an art room. That's how I look at the 3 classrooms separate than the games room, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we've had that all along. So
I think they were calling the room downstairs art. When that got taken away, it's now upstairs. What used to be a conference room on the right next to the games room, that was a conference room, and now that's been eliminated and turned into
we're
a
missing the
classroom.
conference.
Now there's no conference space. There's no community space. Yeah.
Right, so it's the conference space that was missing, not so much a classroom.
Well, the multi-purpose space downstairs, that to me is a classroom. That was the art room downstairs. That was taken out of option 6.
And now it's an art room upstairs instead.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Smaller, appears to be smaller,
A lot
and you want to
smaller,
double check
yeah.
the size on that.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think the other thing too is it's also missing storage space, right? Because part of that arts and crafts room had multiple things that were listed as like storage. So thinking about when there was a question that I think Rich was asking about, like where do you put tables and chairs when you don't need them or you need to shift them out? So there seems to be in this option 6 a severe loss of storage space.
Yeah. They did say that not every storage space was drawn out. Obviously, these were come up with in a quick way, and those are the kind of details that we can continue to work on. I guess I'm more to Michelle's point, worrying about size. Is that art room big enough, right? And then they'll find storage space. I think we have some room, and the loss of the conference room. Anybody else on this? Dave?
Just one last question, Michelle, since you just sat down.
I know. Just pull up a chair.
And I'm going to ask this question again later. Does this limit functionality of the senior center in totality?
Downstairs absolutely does. I honestly don't know what I would do with that exercise space with the pickleball courts back to back. I did go online and Google a bunch of images to see how other places do it. But to us, it doesn't meet the model of what we do. It's very exclusive. If we'd have to put up a divider, we wouldn't know who was there. It wouldn't be an inclusive space. So we just don't get the design. I feel like someone earlier said just bad usage. Just bad usage. I don't see the point. Yeah.
All right. Anybody else on the upper level floor plan? And otherwise, we'll move on to where it sits. Good. All right. Let's see. Obviously, I'm not sure why. Oh, at the expanded parking I asked about, because I believe that's in 6 and 7, and that's because everything's getting pushed out, which pushes out some of the parking spaces. So that that back area that used to be potentially overflow may have to be, actual spaces. And he said we kind of find a sweet spot on that when this all kind of settles in, but wanted to make sure people were aware of that. And it just, like with everything else we looked at, this just cuts down on excavation. So why don't we look at 7? So 7 obviously pushes things really out from underneath the rock, which is, from QA&M's perspective, where a lot of the costs were going to be. And this was another take on it. I think, and Michelle will probably make you jump up, but we probably, why don't we look at the upper level floor plan and make sure everything's in there, and then we can move down to the lower level floor plan. So Michelle, did you have anything particular about this? Again, we're missing a conference room.
So this one, you can definitely tell the multi-purpose room that you can divide into 2 up top has been expanded. So
Right.
it's a little larger, so that's good to see. And then obviously the games and arts and crafts space are a little larger. We really liked the patio up here. That gives us a lot of outdoor usage. It's right off of the kitchen, so there could be events and activities out there. So that was a highlight, and we liked that. Downstairs, I think we got the fitness space back. That looked a little better. We're still missing a large multi-purpose room. And, the benefit of these multi-purpose rooms is you don't want all rooms being used at once all the time. You always need an overflow room. So it just takes away that, extra space you need for overflow or unexpected events and activities.
So, and we'll go back to this in a minute, but I guess when you're talking about that multi-purpose space in our current plan, right, it really was called arts and crafts. It was just a very large space downstairs, right?
Correct.
Okay, but you're referring to it as multi-purpose. I just wanted to clarify that. Okay. So I did ask about the patio, and we'd have some discussion about that. Unfortunately, back to if we want basketball, that may have to raise that up a little bit, and then we're kind of into window space out of the 3-part multi-purpose space. So that we're going to have to get a better understanding at. I did ask about this roof area, if a conference room could be put into some of that space to get that necessary conference room back. And then that wouldn't be much different than how it is now. Yeah, other than that, it was just the other relocation of the multi-function classroom. So why don't we skip? Did anybody else anything about the upper level or comments about that? Rich?
So, it would be nice, I guess, to have a patio off the multifunction room, but obviously that's going to be a big problem for the abutters, right?
Mm-hmm.
Big problem, I would guess. So, it's also going to create a space where it's got this giant flat roof, with the patio on top of it, essentially over finished space, which, maintenance-wise could be a future problem. But if we were to go with this, I think you'd have to do something where the patio is, I hate to say have a fence around it or something, but something where it's limiting the outlooking view onto the abutters. properties.
I did share that there was concern, and I'm probably, and I never disagree with Michelle because I know she really likes this space, but I feel like we're so crunched for space that any space that's going to be weather limited, I'm a little not opposed to, but I don't know if it's better use of that space. Because obviously wouldn't be used in the winter, wouldn't be used during the rain, which there seems to be a lot of lately. The same concerns about maintenance and, the abutters as well. So when I did ask about, I just said that, some people had expressed some concern, and, Rocco did say that it could be turned into more of a two-story of that lower multi-sport space, but becomes problematic in cutting off the window space at I keep calling everything multifunction, but the three-part multifunction room. So that's going to have to be a discussion on how they see that working out. Anybody else have any thoughts about 7 and its upper floor plan? Good. Let's sneak back to the lower again. So obviously this brings everything out further into the parking lot, which we'll see, but it is probably the biggest reduction in size and potential costs. So I guess we'll need a clearer picture of what that really looks like. And I'll leave it to Dave to ask Michelle the question again about the impact on usage.
So before I do that, it looks like, and now it could be to scale,
Yeah,
but
right.
it does look like it got narrower. I could be wrong.
I thought so too, but then when I look at the upper level, there's nothing different.
All
So
right.
yeah.
So maybe I'm wrong.
I know, I can't tell.
But it also looks like it did get bigger, right? So the building in totality seems larger. I don't necessarily know that that's what the neighbors have been asking for. However, it does save money, potentially, possible savings. Michelle, it looks like, and we all like patios, right? But it looks like this has similar characteristics, other than that the layout of the lines in the exercise area are no longer sideways, they're now in parallel. It looks like it's very similar on the lower level. And so I'll ask you the same question. Does this impact, would this have an impact on your programming from a functionality standpoint?
All of these options have an impact on space. Sorry, because it's cutting out some of our programming. We're losing space to do activities. So all of them would cut our programming and have
Thank
an
you.
impact. Yep.
Can we ask Cindy to go to the next slide? Because you could sort of look at the difference. There's that white dotted line that shows how much more is, I guess one more slide after that. Yeah, that one. Because that shows, more building that neighbors would be looking at, I think, right? Instead of all being really front loaded closer to Main Street, for everyone that's on Edgewood, right? Like they're going to see more building than they would have seen before.
So,
But it's at a lower level, so maybe they won't because it is a bowl, right? So this level is lower than their properties are, and if we keep all that buffering, they might not see it as much.
To me, and until we see they have a better, clear explanation for it, it almost feels like 2 1 levels as opposed to the 2-level look that we've had from the back.
Right. It is almost like, yes, exactly. Here's the first upper level with the upper level activities.
And a jut out.
And then this other thing, and then that's where the property's sloping down. So to that end, right, with the notion of a patio, like even though they'll be up a little higher, maybe it isn't as obtrusive. I don't know. I feel like sometimes folks there was a photo of a rendering that was from our previous meetings that was sort of like almost an aerial view. And I think that aerial view gave an impression to the general public of people looking at it of a scale that's really bigger than it truly is. It was kind of a bit of an optical illusion, I guess, for lack of a better word. That's something that I think to think about, right? Because when I'm sitting in my backyard, if I'm on Edgewood and I have a patio and I'm looking out and there's buffering and trees, but the actual property here, that lighter gray, is actually lower, so it's not going to be as much of a visual impairment.
No, I remember thinking that too. And I think I've said this before, architects really are artists and they want to make it look a lot, which is good. You know, it should be, and it is a beautiful building, but I think that that angle might have been off. But one thing I do want to ask them, and again, you know, it's been a short time to get a lot of work done, is those renderings from what it looks like outside is going to clear up some of this for us as well. And I'm not sure that when those will be ready. I mean, obviously moving forward, we'll have to have some of those, but I don't see them doing 3 different sets of those to the extent that we had our original plan. So I'll try to get an idea if we at least can have a, you know, even a sketch of what each of these would look like from an outside perspective to give us a clearer picture. So those are the 3 that what we've been given so far. I'd like to just really go over what it is you'd like me to make sure that they're clear of for on Monday. I have a sense that we are not going to be able to come to a full decision, so it may be yet another meeting after that for them to move forward with cost estimates, because I think there's a lot of things still up in the air. But I'm just go around, and I don't want to lose sight of what Dean did miraculously in 5 minutes at the last meeting, and I know has spent a lot of time talking about that. This is not really a true cost-effective way to go about this when you're looking at what we're losing to how much we're saving. It financially really doesn't make a lot of sense, but we have been charged with doing something. And this is the architect's swing at this, and I think at some point we're going to have to accept that we're going to have to move forward with, if we're going to get this to move forward, we're going to have to move forward with some of them. So I really do appreciate that perspective, and I think it's important that we continue to talk about it. I am not at all against us continuing to refer back to the current plan. I see nothing wrong with maybe doing some value engineering to that to potentially do some even minimal cost savings that aren't as much as taking away from programming as maybe aesthetics. And that may be, I don't know if that would be considered an alternate plan, but certainly something we can maybe spend the next month or a month and a half looking at. I'm okay not to have how do you say it, a couple of up above if, you know, that's something that needs to come out. So I think we should continue that conversation. What's the right word? Cupola. Too many different ones. And to that note, I know Tom did come up with some additional value engineering options, most of which were disturbing to me, but certainly something we can talk about. Did everybody get a chance to look at those at the end of the options? And I would love some thought process on some of those. He kind of broke them down between hard costs and soft costs, threw out some potential savings, and the important word is potential. None of these are hard numbers, but just some ideas. And if anything is a absolute no for anybody, we should probably let them know that now. I also worry about throwing these out before we start to actually build this project, because some of them may get lost in the design along the way anyhow. But I think I know I have some that I don't think are truly optional, and I just was wondering what the committee felt about them.
Here you go.
You want to go first, Tony?
Sure.
Great.
Tony Silver. I don't think reducing the buffer design, for example, at $75,000 is something we want to do. I don't think eliminating the stage platform and ramp is something we want to do. I'm not sure what removing kitchen equipment actually means, but you know, you got to cook with something. But it's those 3, and then, you know, the poor gym flooring, concrete flooring versus wood. I'm not sure about that either. So, yes.
Any thoughts, Dave?
Same thoughts. I'm looking at Tony. I'm looking over Tony's shoulder here. But yeah, when you look at this, we've talked a lot about buffers. I like pervious paving. I think it's a good idea for this particular project, especially because of the fact that there is wetlands there, or in the close proximity. I don't think a poured gym floor makes any sense at all. Manual partitions versus automatic only adds to the amount of staff that you have to have, and would reduce the amount of time that you could spend between programs, right? So you'd have to actually make that happen. Yeah, I'm okay losing a cupola. That makes sense, right? But there are certain things that programmatically need to remain in this project.
Lori, just a point of order sort of thing. The Public Works Department hates pervious paving. They do. Yeah, because
But the Conservation Commission loves it.
Yeah, of course, that makes sense. But if you want to plow snow, you're going to tear the thing up every year. That's what George Estrada told me. So I think that's true. So
It's gonna say, that's a tough one for me because I know a lot of and I mean we can get Rena or George in here to talk about. I know a lot of the new areas that they've been really focusing on. They've been having that as a priority, right? The Long Hill area, et cetera. It may be something we have to weigh out a little bit more. Like I said, I know the Conservation Commission, for very good reasons, thinks it's an important element. We'll just have to decide if it's necessary and important or just.
I would keep it. It's like environmentally safe.
Right.
Better.
Yeah, Dean.
Yeah, I'm looking at a lot of these. I did look at these before. I know we're tasked by the town council or a faction of the town council to go away from our original design, but all of these things seem to lend to either more maintenance in the future or kind of a poorer quality product or, reduced functionality. I just do want to point out, and I know we're trying to come to a different solution. I do want to point out, people keep saying it's shoehorned into this property. Everybody on my block has about a 1/3 acre lot. And, if you have a 2,000 square foot house and a 2-car garage, the footprint of that, if it were a 1/2 acre, I don't have a 1/2 acre, but if it were, it's about 7.5%, give or take 0.5%. So if you take the property area of this property and the footprint of the current design that we have, it's 7.5%. It's exactly the same ratio as a person's house on their yard. So it's not really shoehorned. I think that's a little bit overestimated. So some of the zeal that I have for shrinking this is further buttressed by I don't think it's an eyesore. And also, just because the limited functionality that we're going to get, it's going to be between like a 10% cost reduction. Like I said, it's like $12 per year for someone who has a $455,000 house, and we're going to lose 25% of the area. So I know I'm not contributing to a better option, and I know you said it's kind of an oxymoron to make it option the original one, but I would love to do that. And apart from that, I just think the pecking order for me would be the less you can go away from the original design, the best. So.
Rich Kroll. So, the thing I would want to emphasize is we don't want to do anything that's going to minimize the structural integrity of the building, right? We want to make sure that they still build, don't cut corners on the structure of the building or on getting or eliminating low maintenance materials to be, short-sighted on the building. So when I look at this list, things like the cupola that are decorative, fine, but things like the port, is that kosher, how you say it, but that's something you kind of need, right? That's that's the entrance overhang. You're going to have people getting out of cars and need, protection from the weather. Mm-hmm. If you're going to have a gym, even a half-court gym, it should be, wood flooring over some sort of poured floor. I think I agree with everything else has been said on the rest of these items. Maybe these soft costs, though, other than removing furniture, but clerk of the works in lieu of owner's representative and deliver project as general contractor versus CM. I don't totally know what that would mean. So maybe Tom can go through that and
I did
what
ask
that would
him,
mean
right.
to us.
I did ask him to kind of write it out for me, but I'm going to let him talk to you about it because he wrote it out for me and I'm still a little, I shouldn't say I'm totally lost. There are some clear differences, some being more expensive than the other, but some just for how it would work in a town like ours to begin with. The clerk of the works versus owner's rep. Basically, that would mean George Estrada would need to work double time, right? Like that would mean he wouldn't have time to oversee that. That would happen in a town where you have a public works director who would be able to oversee that. So the reality of that is probably not at all very realistic. The general contractor for versus construction management, it sounds like it's more of a risk issue. And though the CM is more expensive, the risks are less and usually probably pay off better. It'll be a decision for people who understand that better than I do. I believe the town typically goes with the CM and in our projects. It looks like those are big ticket items, but at what cost, right? And is it even feasible? The FF&E, I want to say that came from the conversation where somebody thought there was, I know Ron, you mentioned there's some new kitchen equipment, but not all of it's movable. So I think they were just reacting to what we would move over and what we would need to buy new. So I won't get too stuck on that. But the soft cost ones, you look at them, it looks like big numbers, but I don't know that they're feasible for our situation. So we'll have them talk to that a little bit more on Monday.
Rich,
All right.
the way that I understand these, other than the FF&E and the soft cost portion, all of that is just risk mitigation.
Yeah.
So you're saving money, but at what cost?
Right.
Okay. May I?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing is, I remember back when we were doing the sewer projects in the late 2000s, 09, 08, that area. I believe we used a clerk of the works and not a owner's rep. And most people would say, though, those projects weren't managed really well. So, FYI.
And a much smaller to be there, overseeing kind of thing. So that's probably not a reality. But I think Tom just wanted to put in anything that's even up for discussion. Christine? Were you done? Sorry.
Honestly, I don't have anything more to add to the discussion other than to echo what everyone else has said. Certainly, getting rid of the cupola is no big deal, but I don't think you can get rid of the overhang that it's protecting people from the weather as they're exiting, a van or getting dropped off. The thing about the partitions, it's more work for someone, right? And that's a difficult thing to be asking this particular user group to be working on. So, the paving thing, right? Like, some of these they're good ideas to throw out there, and maybe 2 to 3 of them might be feasible for us to come to a consensus on. But the vast majority of them, I think we're going to realize that those are needs, and it would be great if we could save this kind of money, but it's just not. At what cost what are we losing while, nickel and diming it from that perspective?
Okay, I've got not quite a few things, but at any rate, for the sake of argument, the average loss of square foot is 7,242 square feet we're losing per building. The average loss is about 22.6% of the building at about a 9.7% savings on average of all the options. All right, that being said, the hard cost, the cupola could go as a savings. The porte cochere possibly could go, but I don't agree with that because I consider that might be a safety issue, perhaps. The manual partitions, again, it might come down to timing and whatnot. I could go either way with that. The poured gym and the wood various, is that a safety issue? I'm not really sure. If you bang your head on wood, you bang your head on poured concrete or whatever, is there different damage? The reduced stone front and curtain wall, what that amounts to is the more glass in the building is the curtain wall. So we can have less glass and more building. That might be what they're referring to for that $125,000. The stone fence in the rear facade and new siding, I don't have an issue with that. That could go away. The kitchen, I'd bypass. That would eliminate the stage and platform. That has to stay. Wood slat and acoustic ceilings versus the static tile. I'm not sure if that means insulated ceilings or whatnot, but I think that could possibly be addressed. Asphalt paving versus pervious paving, would that prevent any environmental issues? Tony, I might defer to you for that. Since it's not going to be, would we have to implement any kind of flood control in that area since it's going to be grassy? Or
I'm sorry, Ron, what's your question?
Use the asphalt paving versus pervious paving.
Yeah, I mean, asphalt is obviously longer lasting, but pervious is better for the environment and it's better for flood control.
I had a question that possibly could go. Reduce the buffer design, I think that's an abutter's concern, that should definitely stay. The soft cost, I wasn't too sure about the other things, if it could be done in-house or not. I think it was addressed that it couldn't be, really, or perhaps not. But at any rate, the only thing I thought that might come to play to a realistic reduction, and that is reducing the contingencies that are built into the hard costs. I'm done. Thank you.
Contingencies on the current cost estimate, you mean? Yeah, so Tom will talk to those a little bit. I mean, some of those are based on how we do this, and some of those are based on unknown times right now. So I don't know if we're gonna have a lot of control over that. I think he was being very conservative with those. They look like big numbers, but they might just be also realistic numbers, though.
Just an area to consider.
I think it's important in looking at this that we don't make assumptions that we're not sure about. So, for example, the manual partitions versus automatic partitions, we don't know what that means. Let's find out. Maybe it's not that big a hassle. If it's not, we should consider it. And I think that's true in a lot of these things. I wouldn't take one dime of savings off the table until we know what they actually mean.
Right.
Just a couple of points from earlier. To correct the record a little bit, Lori, I did vote for number 4.
You did.
So I think you said no
No,
one
I said
voted for.
other ones had one vote each.
I think you said no one voted for a separate building. I did.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I think the barn actually solves a lot of problems that we were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like the barn as far away from the building as it's drawn, but I do think it's there. It could be a possibility. And I also asked, just again, you said no one said that we should get rid of our original plan. I did say I don't think we should revisit it. That's not
I said
healthy.
the majority because I knew you didn't.
And then my third point here is, what's our budget? Maybe I'm naive. I don't know. I don't understand why we're having this exercise when we don't have a number to work toward. Seems ridiculous to me.
Mm-hmm.
So can we get one?
We weren't given one. We haven't been given one, and
Not an answer. Can we get one?
So after the last town council meeting, we've had some discussions about just with the town council chair, and he talked about reducing per square feet, et cetera, but nothing really that said this has to happen has come from the town council from the beginning of this project. It's always, if it had originally been tasked out that way, here's your budget, build something, we would be in a different situation, but that has not been said, nor was that ever our charge. So the charge was to reduce the costs, and that's what we're working towards.
I'm assuming somebody knows what they'd vote for. Why can't we know that?
Somebody knows what? I'm sorry.
Somebody knows the number that would be yes. Why can't we know that number? It seems insane.
Mm.
And if we're all shaking our heads saying, I know, well, let's do something about it.
I mean, the conversation has been had. I don't think anybody's going to stick to an exact number. That's my impression, is that no one's going to say. In private conversations, the town council chair talked about $800 per square foot, but then throughout different square feet. So that's not really a budget, right? I think they were really looking at how we can reduce costs per square foot as opposed to coming to a certain number. Oh,
I think it's nuts.
Lori, through the chair, I was in that meeting with Chairman Mazzaro. He asked for one of the concepts to be $800 a square foot at 27,500 square feet. So we had asked for that to be one of the options, and we didn't see that in this model.
So Mike, I'm going to correct you on that. He asked for $800 a square foot. I had never heard through that meeting 27,500. Actually, you brought up 30,000 square feet. There were a lot of numbers being pushed around. I looked through my notes. We all looked through our notes. And until that came up in a separate email, that never came up at that meeting. And so that was never addressed with the architects. I know the $800 square foot, which I did share with the architects, was a goal for yourself and Carl, but you may have thought that was said, but it was not said at that meeting.
Well, I didn't say it, Carl said it.
I know you didn't. Neither one of you did, actually. You did say $800 a square foot, but and I believe Tom has had conversations about that. It's kind of hard to work to that number, but and I will say too, in that meeting, we talked about getting different cost estimates, and some that were brought up at the town council meeting, a group to do a cost estimate that may come in lower, and I believe the architects will be pursuing that. But that 27.5 never came up at that meeting. Okay.
Lori,
Yeah, go ahead.
So, $800 a square foot. I just want to point out again, and I know I'm picking on numbers and all, but our original estimate was $1,058 per square foot. And each of these reductions, because the cost reduction isn't commensurate with the area reduction, the biggest reduction we have goes up to $1,333 per square foot. So it goes up about $300 a square foot. So we're going the wrong way. And if you follow the trend, we'd have to build a much bigger area to get down to $800 per square foot. I might be being Captain Obvious here, but I just want to point that out.
No, it's
for the record. It's nonsensical to. Okay. Thank
And
you.
I've only banged my head against the wall 1,000 times about about this charge, and it's difficult. Listen, maybe a direction should have changed a long time ago, but we are now where we are at. And this is the charge we've been given. The architects are doing their best to make some reductions. We have some decisions to make that happen. I don't know if it'll be 800 square feet. Who knows what'll happen when the cost estimates come out. I hope we'll get closer to a better number. These are all potential numbers that are put up there, so no matter how many times we turn them around, we won't know until a professional does the cost estimating based on what we're willing to give up. What I get clearly from this committee is that we are not willing to give up 10 years of work on what a program needs. Otherwise, why bother building it? If we want to build a square box, then we can probably get something really cheap, but is that going to serve the purpose that the seniors need? And I think we can talk around this 1,000 times, and we can go to both directions, that we're going to put our foot down and say we're not changing from our original, or we can say we need to come up with something, in my view, unrealistic, that doesn't serve the purposes. But we've got to move forward with something realistic, and I know this is difficult, and I know this is not an easy task for anybody. But we are stuck with giving them some feedback moving forward, and I can assure you that the architects are taking in as much as this can to make this a project that is going to be accepted by the town council and by the town, and that's all we can really do right now. So we can kind of go back and forth about this coulda, shoulda, woulda. I don't think it serves any purpose, and I'm just talking about that in general. I appreciate you talking about that we may not be saving money by cutting things out. I'm not a professional who can give you a different idea of how to do that. You know, if I said my understanding is then we lose program. It's that simple. If we are going to really cut down on per square foot, then we're going to have to change what the programming is. And is that something we're willing to do? I have always thought we should never do this if we're going to do it half-assed, for lack of a better word. So I appreciate everybody's input. I will get them as much information as possible. QA&M will do what we ask them to do, but they can't do the impossible. Exactly. So, try not to lose. So, best way to move on, and I'm sorry to have that back and forth with you, Mike, but I know what my recollection is, and there has been no real clear perspective from the town council as whole, other than the motion that we have in front of us, and that's where we're going to go from.
Can we ask for one?
I did.
Can we ask again?
Sure. What would you actually like me to ask them?
What's the budget?
Okay.
And not per square foot,
No.
because that gets fuzzy math.
What are you going to say yes to?
What
Is
number
what you're
works?
asking.
And then we'll build the best damn building we can build for that number.
So what we need to remember with that is what I was trying to say, is that may be impossible based on what this program needs, and but we can ask it.
That is a much different conversation.
Mm-hmm. I'll be
Right.
glad to. I'll be sending that first thing in the morning.
Wouldn't that be totally random? I mean, I can't see how you figure that out.
Yeah. That's the problem with it,
So-
right? That's.
So the one thing, just because we're talking about price per square foot, so the one thing that I can say out of this, and I applaud QA&M for putting all of this together, because this was thrown as quickly as possible to give us as many options as we could possibly come up to, even though we don't have a budget. But when you talk about price per square foot, at the now $125,000 of extra money that we were required to use to make all of this happen, we just added $4.17 per square foot to this project. Just by going through this, just by going through
Agreed.
this.
Agreed.
Again,
The
and then-
water under the bridge.
And so we choose one of these options, it's 28 million, and they come back and say, nope. So now we're gonna have to do it again. Let's just find out what's gonna work and make it work. And if it doesn't work, we can go back and say, sorry, we can't do our
build it for
job
that.
at that price. I'm fine with that, if we agree to that. But let's do this in the right order.
No, I agree. And I will tell you that, and I think, I believe I mentioned this last time, that I asked for input from the town council on where they might see reductions, and I was told that that wasn't their job.
Yeah,
So-
just if I could add, the 125,000, just because I've been thinking about this for about a month now, we're talking about teacher salaries, highway department purchases, we're talking about police cruisers and safety equipment, things like that could be purchased for the town that we are now spending on architects.
But we could also make that argument on the 32 million, right? So let's just put it on the table. I don't understand why we can't put it on the table.
I feel like I've tried, but I will try again. Okay, and move. I'm just trying to move forward with what we have, and I will certainly again attempt that conversation. And I do believe the architects have had that conversation to some extent, and what is reasonable given what the programmatic needs are again. Anything else that you would like me to share with Tom and Rocco? And I had planned anyhow in the morning to, or tonight, to just update the town council on these three options in case any of them haven't seen them yet, and that we'll be just discussing them further and open to any other input. What I can tell you is that with our charge being potentially to have something done by July, a whole new building is not going to be able to be done by that. So that's something that we'll have to accept if that's the case. I mean, I think that was part of the thing of kind of nipping away at the current one was the time that we have as part of this motion in front of us as well. Anything else? Oh, Kelly, she's probably, oh no, she's in California. It's earlier. She's still there. I know. I think she's gone.
See her.
And I know Dawn has no voice, and Vicky may not as well. But did anybody in TV land there have any input or any last words you'd like to share with us? I'm going with a no. I know Dawn can't speak. Okay, I should have grabbed Kelly before she came. Mike, do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, I mean, options 6 and 7, I initially liked the fact that I saw cost savings there, but then I saw a reduction of 8,000 square feet, and we're only saving 4 to 5 million. I thought we were going to be saving, a couple million, 3 to 4, and maybe site work and excavation, maybe even half that. But I thought that the reduction of 8,000 square feet would bring in a heck of a lot more of a cost savings. And I guess my biggest question to Tom is, we were scratching our heads about the $1,000 a square foot, and we're hoping that he would come back a little more aggressive, right? I think that was one of the things I was looking for, and it actually increased $300 a square foot. So I guess the question would be, if I don't want to say making the job easier, but if we're helping reduce the size, we're eliminating the excavation cost that we already have a line item for. What is making the cost per square foot go up $300, close to $300 a square foot? Even if we reduced it $100 a square foot to $900, I think you'd see a huge difference there.
Yeah.
So, that would be my biggest question.
Yeah, I think a lot of people agree with, especially 7, which I think a lot of people like some of the concepts of that, but with such a reduction in size, we're hoping to see bigger savings. And I'm going to reiterate again that those were thrown, potential savings from their perspective. There may be more wiggle room in there more savings in there than is obvious. I think Mondays will be a more workshop of a meeting to kind of go through some of that.
So, Lori, the other thing with the question is, when I asked about the $800 a square foot, 27.5 thousand square feet, that would be 22 million, right? Even if it wasn't at $800 a square foot, let's say it was at 900 or 950, we're still in that 24, 25 million range.
Right.
And that's not counting any of this value engineering money, which is a separate, cost on the side. And if we included that as an ad alternate, that's $2.3 million worth of ad alternates. And to everyone's point, I'm not saying eliminate them all, eliminate none, but if we could get into a 27,000 square foot range at $900 a square foot, you're in a $24, $25 million range. And now we can really look at that value engineering. I think we'd be in a much more aggressive price range. I guess that's where, that was what I was hoping to see with one of the options.
Yeah, and like I said, I think those potential savings were, I think I shared with you guys that Tom was away for a good portion of this, so I think those were kind of just a throw at them. I think maybe they'll have a little more detail with that, and obviously we'll have more detail once the cost estimate comes in. But I've got to imagine that I think we're going to get closer to those numbers with losing potentially that much space. If excavation is really the cost savings, and we're looking at least with 7, a significant savings in excavation, I'm hoping that number is going to change a little bit. So I don't want to get so stuck on the numbers they've given so far, but I think we're still trying to whittle away at stuff. And I think the purpose of tonight is to really see, particularly from the senior center's perspective, what we can't or shouldn't give up. I'll never say can't, but
and I think that's to end my point about maybe to some of the public comment. I'm not looking to shrink the building by a third or 25%. I was hoping for a little bit more bang for our buck, being able to, negotiate a little bit to something that we all felt comfortable that we could push to November. And I feel like we're getting closer to that, and I thought it was positive.
Okay, great. All right, anybody else?
Yeah, Lord, I just wanted to point out one thing, just to Mike's point. The soft costs are, I don't want to call them fixed, but they're not nearly as flexible as the hard costs are. So if you have to pay $100,000 for an application, whether you build a 1 square foot building or a 100,000 square foot building, as you shrink your building, your application cost is going to take a larger percentage of that cost. So it's a fixed cost. So that's why that's happening. We're taking a big reduction in our hard costs, but our fixed costs are staying relatively the same, which is driving up your dollar per square foot. So that.
Good point.
Okay.
It's like that. I think I said this in the last meeting about when square footage cost came up. It's economies of scale. That's a basic economic lesson.
All right, Ron, for you, you good? Okay. This was helpful. Sorry if I got a little testy. I'm a little full of this for the last few weeks. I'm not gonna lie. But I do think we're moving in the right direction. I think everybody's focus is to keep the program that seniors deserve, and to keep the neighbors in mind, and to keep all of our pocketbooks in mind. And it's okay if we all see, if we don't always see eye to eye on that, but I think we're moving in the right direction. I think Monday will be really helpful. I'll try to give them as much information, but please don't be surprised if we have to have yet another meeting after that. If I can ever find meeting space, which was another exercise in patience, but I think we're moving in the right direction. And if anybody has any afterthoughts when you kind of get out of this, please don't hesitate to send them to me, and I will move them along to those guys. But let's look at Monday as a real kind of workshop in a lot of these questions, and potentially I'll have some feedback from town council as well, see if we have a little more direction. All right, everybody, I believe that should do it then. Who's ready to call for
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, at time 9:01.
Seconded.
Second, all in favor? Have a good night, everybody. Thank you.
So the last. The last.
Yeah.
I just got the last Board of Finance meeting, Rosemary, right? Richards Way.